Welcome to the Longshore Insider Podcast from the American Equity Underwriters. At AEU, we are passionate about helping waterfront employers protect their workers and their businesses. Join us as we explore practical strategies for improving workplace safety, effective claims management, and much more. So let's dive in. Welcome to the Longshore Insider Podcast.
Hello, and thank you for listening to the AEU Longshore Insider Podcast. In this series, our focus is safety. Specifically, we're speaking with health and safety experts from across the maritime industry to find out what they do to cultivate a culture of safety among their teams and throughout their organizations. I'm joined today by Matt Hockman, Loss Control Manager for AEU. He has given us his perspective on safety. And I'm also joined by Matt Rolf, Director of HSE at Pacific Pile and Marine. Matt, it's a pleasure to have you both here with me.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Absolutely. So Matt, Rolf, let's get started by just telling me a little bit about yourself and what it is that you do.
So I've been in safety for about 14 and change years. I started in the commercial world and then got into maritime about 5 years ago with another company, and then started with Pacific Pile and Marine a little over 4 years ago now. We're a marine contractor, but we do kind of a multitude of things, really docks, piers, wharves, that type of stuff. But we also do environmental dredging with hydraulic excavators. It's really environmental cleanup work. And I have a team, currently have a team of five safety managers working for me for operations in the United States and in Canada. We work from California to Alaska, including British Columbia, so covering the entire West Coast.
So it sounds like you've got some employees who are spread out there. You've got some distributed teams. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about that a little bit. Tell me what it's like to manage those distributed teams, and also, can you talk a little bit about that remote management style, what it takes to pull that off?
It's tough sometimes trying to manage. It's easy to manage my team because there's just 5 of them. I'm going to say them, but because I have a great team to work with. I actually need to hire a 6th this year, another one to work in Seattle for a project, but getting information out to people, work teams in remote I don't even have to say remote locations. Getting a consistent information out to projects, all projects at different locations at the same time, but getting a consistent message out is important. It's helpful, but making sure I'm sharing the same message to everyone. The hardest part actually is just sharing the same message across the border. So between U.S. and Canada, that's really the hardest part for us. And the reason that it's important that we're sharing the same message is it's to help develop a culture, not just a safety culture, but a company culture as well. Is that we want people to feel like they're part of the same company, that they're not. Even though our Canada is a separate division, we want them to still feel like they're working for PPM. It's Pacific Pile and Marine, but they're all working for PPM.
Sounds like communication
Absolutely
is key.
Yeah.
And it's got to be hard. I can't even imagine working with that many people across different divisions and different areas, but it sounds like you've kind of figured out some things that work. And, I mean, there's going to be headaches. There's going to be challenges every day. But what are some of the effective methods you've found to communicating across those teams and also building that team mentality as well?
Luckily enough, we're small. We're family run. We joke that we swing way above our weight limit. We swing way above the belt. We're 200 employees competing against the Kiewits of the world, where they're 20,000 employees all across the globe. We compete against Kiewit and we win because we're not afraid of these complex projects that are a little more difficult than we probably should get into, and we're like, what are we doing now? But then we finish the project and we learn something out of it, and we kind of move on, and okay, we've done this before, we can do it again. And then we have bigger equipment than people expect us to have. We own the West Coast's largest fully revolving derrick. We own some big excavators to be able to do some of the dredging work that we do that people don't expect us to have. So, we're outfitted that way, and for strategically. But then, we use teams. We're now that the internet is more efficient and there's more online capabilities, we've gotten away from using a shared drive that you have to get on a VPN, and now we have SharePoint, and we use the Microsoft suites. We're using Teams, and we're using we don't use video on Teams, but I can think of like 6 Teams meetings that we hold a week. I hold a meeting with my team every 2 weeks, so that we get together. It's supposed to be tomorrow, but I'm here, so I'm canceling it. But I tell them, just because I'm not there doesn't mean you guys can't hold this meeting together. But, we have a meeting regularly to talk about departmental things, whether it's training needs or safety week is next week. Because we're so dispersed, we don't have a lot of people working in our yard or working locally in May. And that's based on the type of work that we do. But we have a lot of people working in the yard in June. So we actually do the Wednesdays in June, ending the month with a barbecue. But we spread that information out, push that information on a regular basis, and then get people into the yard. But we're constantly sharing that information. And then for our Canada projects, okay, you guys do your own thing. Here's some ideas, here's some topics, get vendors in, whatever. And then they're doing a consistent thing that we're doing in Seattle. So we're sharing a consistent message.
So technology's kind of opened a lot of doors for communication.
It's made it, when COVID hit, 9 days after I started this job, technology helped a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know where we'd be if we didn't have Teams and other avenues to have conversations whenever we need to.
Yeah.
And I think that we're moving forward, and clear communication is going to be the way of the future, just because we have the tools to do that. So with that, though, and having different employees on different projects and complex projects, like you said, how do you train them properly on those projects?
It depends. So we had a project, I'm going to go back a couple of years to 2021. We had a project in Anchorage, Alaska. We paid a trainer to go to Anchorage, did a first aid class, did a rigging class. I did an orientation for the whole group, and then did a confined space class, and did a couple other things. 3 full days of training ahead before the project even started. And then part of the reason we did that is because part of that group was going to go do a project in Antarctica, which they did successfully. We did that training in March, and then in December they left for Antarctica for 4 months.
You mentioned that you're a smaller company, and you mentioned that you've got employees, in Canada, and you've got employees at other locations, and they're going to Antarctica,
Yep.
right? So you use that technology to your advantage to make sure that you keep everybody on the same page, and you provide a consistent message across the board at all times. Can you speak to company culture? How does that help, or does it help also create a sense of community within your teams?
It does. So we had a supervisor meeting last week. Well, we don't fly everybody down from Alaska. We don't fly everybody down from Canada. So we have to have a Teams meeting. But we had, 25 people in the room locally, and then we have everybody else on Teams. It's video. at least those that are in the room are presented as video, so those that are remote. And then last Thursday we had a town hall that's everybody that's local, everybody, all the craft, all the office staff, everybody comes to our shop in Seattle, and then it's basically an all hands. And then we present that video to everyone that's remote. So everybody that's working in Skagway, everybody that's working in Canada sees what's going on, seeing the same information on video, sharing the information out. We're sharing data analytics. We're sharing, injury trending, all that information. The use of Power BI and data analytics is also helping our culture. People are seeing how we're doing, or whether it's good or bad. We had a very bad downward trend at the beginning of this year. So we had an emergency town hall a month ago. And then just last Thursday, we had another follow-up meeting to help try to steer ourselves in another direction. So that does shift that culture. I will say that we've had culture for the 15 years that we've been in business, whether it's positive or negative. When I started, we had safety culture. It wasn't good. It's getting better, but it's not been phenomenal the whole time.
Can I ask a follow-up question? You speak to that, saying that it hasn't always been necessarily good. Could you point to specific examples where things have improved and maybe morale has been boosted as a result of the practices that you have implemented?
Consistency, updating policy, getting the right people in the right spots. It's not me. It's a lot of it's consistency. We've been through a slew of safety directors, like every 3 to 4 years. I'm at the 4-year mark. I think I might be the longest tenured safety director we've had, which is unfortunate. But it's because you get up to a certain point and you're like, nothing's changed. I knew my predecessor before he even worked for this company. And when I talked to him about coming on, he's like, these are the three main reasons why I left. And so I knew what I was getting into before I even took it on. But it's not, it's tough, but there's days I'm like, I give up. I want to go, I'm going home. I'm taking my ball and I'm going home. But there's other days it's kind of rewarding and getting out of it what I, put into it. So,
well, I think you put in so much as a safety professional. I think we kind of pour our hearts into what we do, because if we don't, somebody could be injured. Somebody could, life could change drastically. So I think focusing on that success and making sure we're moving forward and moving the ball forward and just continuously keeping our focus on improving culture one day at a time. Yeah, we may take some steps backwards, but we're going to take 2 steps forward the next day. Mm-hmm. So with that, can you share any success stories about connecting and training and across the different groups that's worked?
Some of our, so we have a huge gap, and I think it's an industry issue in our pile driving side, not necessarily in the operator side. So that's our work, is pile driving, and I'm going to say operators, but not necessarily from a crane operator's perspective, but like our hydraulic excavator dredging side of operators. And I say gap in experience. So we have young pile drivers coming in, up to 40 years old. And then we have retiring in the next 5 to 10 years. So we have this 10 to 15 year age gap. And so trying to get that shift, that knowledge transfer is really difficult, but we're now finally getting that knowledge transfer, and that is what's important to our culture, because it's, getting somebody that's got, they might have 15 years of experience, 20 years of experience at 40, but they might also only have 1 or 2 years of experience. because they're coming in as an apprentice at 40. We're seeing that a lot. They might be transferring books from another trade and coming in as a journeyman, but they're not really a journeyman because we're union. So, but they might be transferring books from like a plumber or a pipe fitter or lath and plaster or something, and like, so they've got 4,000 hours of experience, so they're halfway to their journeyman level, but they're still an apprentice, and they don't have any marine experience. They don't know how to work on a barge. They don't know to keep their hands out of the spud well, or they don't know all these things. So knowledge transfer is important, and that drives that. That's where our culture is impacted the most, is knowledge transfer.
So you're fighting.
It's nothing to do with me.
It's that knowledge gap.
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
And you don't know what you don't know.
Correct.
And it's you hope that they get what they know and that they understand more and more each day. But there's also a communication gap, and it sounds like you guys are finally starting to see that communication gap be bridged.
It's getting better.
And it just takes time.
Yeah.
And we're going to have more and more people entering the workforce that have never had it before.
Yeah.
So hopefully more people can learn from these types of conversations, and we can help the industry move forward in that knowledge gap arena. So there's a lot to unpack when it comes to communication, but just having those lines that can go both ways, I think, is the number one thing.
Yeah.
You need to be able to be heard, and you need to hear people.
For sure.
And you mentioned something earlier. Some days you feel like picking up your ball and going home, and I know that knowledge gap certainly contributes to that and all these different challenges. And all of us here would be liars if we said that we didn't have those days. And that's why I think it's really important to talk about that, because it's not always rainbows and butterflies and sunshine, right? And when it is, it's really easy to be good at what we do. It's really easy when things are perfect. It's when those issues float to the top of the surface and really start to overwhelm us that we really have to do our best and to be most diligent. And can you speak to those rough days when you do feel like that? How do you push through and make it across the other side? What do you do to keep that consistency going even when you feel at your worst?
I mean, we're in construction. It's marine construction, but so falls is what we always talk about, right? For the number one leading cause of death in construction. Suicide's the number 2 leading cause of death for male construction workers. So we talk about at work. We talk about mental health and depression, suicide prevention. Sharing resources. In every one of our safety meetings that I send out, I share 988 for the U.S. In Canada, it's 800-321-CARE, C-A-R-E. It's the same. So it's the same resource for Canadian workforce. It's basically a suicide prevention hotline. There's a lot of other things in our lives beyond work, obviously, but
we can't lead our teams if we don't show that care. I mean, you have to have that empathy. You have to relate to what they're going through.
Correct. And
it's not important to just tell them what to do. They have to know and feel that you mean what you say.
Correct.
And so you bring up a great point, and I know that we're here to talk about safety and managing remote teams and things like that, but you bring up a greater point, and that is making sure that everybody is in the right mental state to perform their job, because there's nothing really more dangerous for themselves and for others than to step onto that job site in the wrong space and potentially have a safety incident. And it's so important to help them, guide them through that and to get the care that they need, because it's not that you are worried about company assets or anything like that. You're really worried about that person as an individual. And I think that's what you're saying is we need to get to the point where they know we actually do care.
I'm more worried about them going home every day at the end of the day with all the bits and pieces they came to work with. than anything else. That's my number one goal, is to make sure that they go home at the end of the day.
When you never know what somebody's carrying with them to work as well.
Ever.
And I think that's why it's so important to know your employees and know what motivates them, know what's going on in their life. Because if you know what's going on in their life, then you know when something's off.
Yeah.
And to me, mental health's not an easy conversation to have with anybody, but it's an important one, and it's one that we have to focus on now. And unfortunately, in our younger generation, it's something that's more prevalent. But on the upside, they're more in tune with what's going on with their mental health and their and their happiness in general.
Yeah.
So they're not going to stick around somewhere that doesn't work for them in the long run.
It's important to find everyone's why. And the why is why they're at work. It could be that they want to raise a family. It could be that they want to go hunting. It could be that they want to buy the newest truck on the market. It could be that they want to retire someday. It could be that they're raising their grandkids. It could be that it could be any number of things, but finding that why. I don't know where we're at on time, but I had a worker years ago. It was when I was in the commercial world. I walked up to him, and his supervisor had gotten to him first, and he had been dry cutting concrete, no respirator, didn't have a face shield on, no earplugs. He had safety glasses on. Supervisor got him get a face shield and a dust mask, and so we were good to go. And he grabbed some earplugs, and he just laid them in his ear. Didn't actually put them in. And I was like, "Hey, do you know how to put those in?" And he just kind of laid them in his ear, and I was like, "No, actually put them in." I was like, "Do you understand why it's important to protect your hearing?" And he was probably 60. He was close to retirement. I was like, "Are you married?" "No." "You have any kids?" "No." "You got a dog at home?" "No." "Cat?" "No." I was like, "Well, then you got to be the richest man in the world. Never been married, don't have any kids, don't have any pets. Like, what do you do with your money? No offense." But he's like, "Well, I like to call my mom every couple of weeks back in New Orleans, and I send her money." I was like, "How would you like to not be able to hear your mom on the phone when you call her?" And he was devastated. And I showed him how to put a pair of earplugs in. And then every time I saw him on the job after that, he'd be like, "Hey, look." And his earplugs were in correctly. That his mom was his why. And I use that story still to this day. And that was 2015. It was almost a decade ago. That was his why. That was his important reason to be at work.
Well, had you not opened up that line of communication with him, you would have never known.
Subcontractor, too. Not even one of my own employees.
Yeah. Same difference at the end of the day,
finding someone's why of the reason they're at work is important. And then figuring out it was simple. It was a little complicated, but it was simple. But it's like figuring out why people come to work, and that builds culture. It's like I know people's significant others' names. I know some of their kids' names. I know what kind of pets they have. I know what they like to do in their spare time, because that's important to them. It's what they're willing to tell me. I'm on social media with some of the guys at work because they reach out to me. A few of them have reached out to them on, become friends on Facebook or whatever. And because of that, they know where I'm at. They know when I go on vacation. I know when they go on vacation, kind of thing. And we joke about it at work, and it's important because it's important to everybody. That's the culture.
Yeah.
That's how you keep that culture going.
Well, I feel like you may have already answered this question in your own way of finding people's why. But if you could tell your younger self one thing about safety, what would that be?
I know I cheated and saw this already, right? So I have a different thing. I did a presentation earlier, and it's not something I would tell a younger version of myself. It's something that I live by. So I was injured at work before I got into safety. And I had an employer that didn't care about me. They basically wrote my claim off. Turned down all offers of light duty, turned down return to work, turned down basically everything. And then during the process of the claim, they were bought out by a larger company. And in the process, they basically bought off my claim. And I was basically left behind. And I will do my absolute best to make sure that an employee never feels left behind or forgotten in the process of an injury, no matter how minor. I do my absolute best to check in with workers regularly, whether it's myself or one of my employees, is making sure that they do have regular communication with an injured worker.
It doesn't take much. A quick phone call.
I get text messages, or I text them, they text me. That's easier. And then, like, I got one that he lives in Utah, and he did a surgery here in Seattle, and we fly him back and forth when he needs to see the doctor. And the last text I had from him, he's like, "Thanks, appreciate you checking in on me." Like, absolutely, no problem. That's easy.
Never forget that.
Absolutely, 100%.
And it all ties back in to what you had mentioned earlier about that connectivity, that consistency. It's staying connected to people. And connection is more than just the text, right? More than just the social media. It is paying attention to what is said in those texts and what is communicated over that social media. And so I think that's the greater point. It's not enough to just check the boxes. You've really got to dive in and commit yourself to these employees and these workers and let them know that you're not separate from them. You are them.
And I've learned recently a better way, instead of asking, "Is there any way I can help you?" to, "Is there any way I can support you? Is there a way that I can better support you?" Support versus help is a big change in word, and I think they appreciate that better.
I think that this has been a great conversation, and I feel like we ended up speaking about more than just the safety, right? The aspects that we went into it, thinking we were going to discuss, and I'm absolutely grateful for that. And I thank both of you guys for being here and being so candid about how you approach safety, because I think it's an important reminder for everyone. So,
Thanks for having
absolutely.
us. And thanks for giving us the platform to talk about these types of things.
Yeah, much appreciated.